What happens when a global movie star and the world's most fearless comedian spent decades dropping warnings about the darkest secrets in entertainment, only for the world to realize years later that they were right the whole time? This isn't just a story about controversial jokes or Hollywood award show drama. It is a deep dive into an industry built on absolute power, enforced silence, and the systematic isolation of anyone who dares to speak out of turn. Back in 1998, long before the world knew the name Harvey Weinstein, Mel Gibson publicly described the disturbing reality of Hollywood's most powerful producers. The reaction from the industry was swift: label him paranoid, freeze him out, and push him to the margins. But while the system tried to erase one voice, another man stepped directly onto the biggest stage in entertainment. For 15 years, Ricky Gervais stood at the Golden Globes in a room packed with the most powerful executives on earth, delivering unfiltered truths disguised as roast jokes. From calling out Jeffrey Epstein's private jet to warning the room about investigative exposes the night before major trials began, Gervais wasn't just performing comedy. He was constructing an undeniable witness statement on live global television. When court documents and unsealed files finally hit the public domain years later, the internet didn't just watch the news. They flooded back to old clips of Gibson and Gervais with a terrifying realization. These two men, following completely different paths, had been laying out the exact same reality all along. But the most unsettling question isn't what they managed to say out loud. It's what else they saw behind closed doors that the public was never supposed to find out. To understand how Mel Gibson and Ricky Gervais managed to dismantle Hollywood's most protected illusions, you have to look past the modern headlines and go back almost 30 years to where the first crack in the wall actually appeared. The story doesn't begin in 2020 during a viral award show moment, nor does it begin in 2017 when the Me Too movement brought down major industry titans. It begins in 1998, during a period when Hollywood studio executives operated with near absolute impunity and the public had virtually no window into the inner workings of elite power. Mel Gibson did not enter the American film industry through the traditional pipeline. He didn't grow up in Los Angeles navigating the politics of talent agencies, networking at elite parties, or learning how to play the quiet game of corporate diplomacy. He became an international star in Australia through films like Mad Max before ever stepping foot into a major Hollywood studio lot. By the time he arrived in North America, he was already a proven box office draw. This outsider status gave him a unique perspective and a dangerous lack of reverence for the unspoken rules that kept the rest of the industry silent. Powerful figures in Hollywood rely heavily on leverage over young actors, ensuring that career advancement comes with an implicit agreement to remain compliant. Gibson, having already built his fame elsewhere, never internalized that code of silence. In 1998, during a sit-down interview with Playboy magazine, Gibson made a series of candid observations that went largely unnoticed by mainstream entertainment outlets at the time. Amid standard questions about film promotion and celebrity life, he described the chilling attitude of a specific, unnamed mega-producer who dominated the film industry. Gibson noted that this individual viewed women in cinema through a deeply disturbing lens, summarizing the producer's mindset with the stark phrase that they should be naked or dead. The specificity of his description left no doubt among industry insiders as to whom he was referring: Harvey Weinstein, the co-founder of Miramax and the most feared gatekeeper in American cinema. At the time, Weinstein was at the absolute peak of his power. He controlled Oscar campaigns, greenlit prestigious projects, and held the careers of directors, writers, and actors in his hands. Rather than investigating Gibson's disturbing claims, the broader media apparatus ignored the warning entirely. The industry chose to protect its most profitable producer, framing Gibson instead as an eccentric, paranoid figure given to wild theories. The systemic punishment for speaking out was subtle but effective: quiet isolation, media dismissal, and label assignment. The industry carried on as usual for nearly 2 decades, leaving Weinstein free to operate without public scrutiny, while Gibson withdrew further into his own independent world. Recognizing that he could no longer work comfortably within the traditional studio framework, Gibson took a step that permanently altered his relationship with Hollywood. In 2004, he decided to finance, produce, and direct The Passion of the Christ, a film depicting the final hours of Jesus of Nazareth. Every major studio in Los Angeles flatly rejected the project. The film was shot entirely in dead languages, Aramaic, Latin, and Hebrew, without subtitles in early cuts, featured no traditional A-list star cast, and completely lacked studio backing. Industry trade papers predicted a total disaster, mocking Gibson for sinking his personal fortune into a project that mainstream executives deemed unmarketable and politically toxic. To fund a movie, Gibson bypassed the entire studio system, risking $45 million of his own money and putting up personal assets as collateral. The resistance from secular Hollywood was intense, with television shows like South Park and mainstream media commentators openly ridiculing his ambition. Yet, when the film opened in February 2004, it defied every industry metric, grossing $83 million in its opening weekend and eventually accumulating over $600 million worldwide. Gibson's personal cut from the film's distribution and merchandise was estimated to be between $300 million and $475 million. By achieving historic box office success entirely outside the studio ecosystem, Gibson proved a terrifying truth to the entertainment establishment. An artist did not need their green light, their distribution networks, or their approval to reach a massive global audience. He had bypassed the gatekeepers, gained absolute financial independence, and shown that the public was far more interested in unfiltered storytelling than the curated output of corporate studios. From that moment on, Gibson wasn't just an outspoken actor. He was a direct threat to the financial control of the Hollywood apparatus. Predictably, the retaliation came when Gibson's personal life fractured in the public eye. In 2006, a drunk driving arrest in Malibu resulted in an outburst that was immediately leaked to news outlets worldwide. Years later, in 2010, private audio recordings containing highly offensive, angry rants were released to the press. The comments were indefensible, and the industry acted swiftly to exile him. Agents dropped him, studios blacklisted him, and he was effectively removed from mainstream cinema overnight. Yet, behind the public outrage lay the deep hypocrisy that defines Hollywood politics. Ari Emanuel, the high-powered Endeavor CEO who famously published an open letter calling for a total industry boycott of Gibson in 2006, quietly signed Gibson as a client just a few years later when it became commercially viable again. The template was clear. When an outspoken figure becomes a liability, the system uses their genuine personal failures to completely erase them. But the moment their talent or brand can generate profit again, the moral outrage vanishes behind closed doors. While Gibson was being systematically isolated from the studio system, an entirely different figure was rising across the Atlantic, one who would use comedy to deliver the exact same warnings to a much wider audience. Ricky Gervais built his career on absolute creative independence. After achieving international acclaim with the original British version of The Office, Gervais maintained full ownership over his work, avoiding the long-term studio contracts that trapped traditional American celebrities. Because he didn't rely on Hollywood executives for his livelihood, he owed no favors to the studio heads, talent agencies, or PR firms that controlled Los Angeles. When the Hollywood Foreign Press Association invited Gervais to host the Golden Globe Awards in 2010, they expected a light-hearted British comedian who would poke fun at celebrity fashion and deliver safe, scripted banter. Instead, Gervais approached the stage with a completely different objective. He refused to let studio writers handle his material, insisting on writing his own jokes in complete secrecy. He famously framed his philosophy around a simple choice. Would he pander to the 200 wealthy industry insiders sitting in the ballroom, or would he speak directly to the 200 million ordinary viewers watching at home? Walking onto the stage holding a glass of beer, dressed casually compared to the black-tie crowd, Gervais set a tone of immediate confrontation. He launched direct attacks at Hollywood's most protected figures, calling out high-profile meltdowns, closeted industry secrets, and corporate hypocrisy live on national television. What the audience mistook for harmless roast comedy was actually the beginning of a 15-year campaign, a systematic, public dismantling of Hollywood's carefully constructed facade, delivered directly from inside their own temple. What began as a single night of sharp-witted hosting quickly evolved into a multi-year masterclass in public interrogation. Over the next decade, Ricky Gervais returned to host the Golden Globes 5 separate times: in 2010, 2011, 2012, 2016, and finally 2020. With each appearance, the tone shifted further away from standard celebrity ribbing and closer toward a methodical, public audit of the industry's most protected secrets. Gervais used the unique immunity granted to a court jester to speak truths that journalists were routinely suppressed from publishing. Year after year, Gervais built a record of references that aged with terrifying accuracy. During his early hosting gigs, he took direct aim at figures like Mel Gibson, mocking his past scandals to establish his own ruthless neutrality. But beneath the celebrity jabs lay much sharper observations. He took aim at Scientology's influence in Los Angeles, closeted Hollywood power brokers, the corrupt voting process of the Hollywood Foreign Press Association itself, and the selective outrage of megastars who preached morality while taking checks from corrupt multinational corporations. In 2016, Gervais delivered a line on live television that sent an awkward hush through the room. While introducing an award, he joked that he would rather have a drink with Mel Gibson in his hotel room than with Bill Cosby. At the time, the full scope of the allegations against Cosby was just beginning to break into mainstream consciousness, and referencing it so explicitly on an award show broadcast was considered a massive breach of protocol. Gervais wasn't interested in maintaining the comfortable illusion of Hollywood glamour. He was intentionally creating moments of raw, unscripted tension, forcing the camera to capture the visible discomfort of executives and actors who knew precisely what and who he was talking about. This dynamic raised an obvious question that few media outlets asked at the time: if Ricky Gervais was actively humiliating the most powerful people in entertainment, why did the network and the Foreign Press Association keep inviting him back? The answer lay in the cynical economics of modern media. The producers were addicted to the ratings. Millions of viewers tuned in specifically to watch Gervais break the unwritten rules of Hollywood's self-congratulation. The industry tolerated his hostility because it served as a convenient release valve. By allowing Gervais to roast them on stage, studio executives could signal to the public that Hollywood had a sense of humor, that it could handle criticism, and that the jokes were all just part of the show. However, on January 5th, 2020, during his fifth and final hosting appearance, Gervais completely shattered that arrangement. The political and cultural landscape had shifted dramatically. The Me Too movement had exposed Harvey Weinstein, Ronan Farrow's investigative reporting had shaken major media institutions, and the arrest and mysterious death of financier Jeffrey Epstein in 2019 had sent shockwaves through global power structures. The room inside the Beverly Hilton was thick with anxiety, packed with figures who knew that years of quiet complicity were suddenly on the verge of exposure. Gervais walked onto the stage and delivered an opening monologue that immediately abandoned any pretense of lighthearted entertainment. Addressing the sea of A-list actors and studio chiefs, he launched a barrage of direct hits that targeted the exact intersection of Hollywood power and systemic corruption. Early in the set, while discussing the length of TV series, Gervais dropped a casual, devastating line about Epstein's private jet, the Lolita Express. He told the crowd that many of them had traveled on that plane to private islands, adding with a cold smile that they needed to write their own material because Epstein hadn't killed himself. The reaction in the ballroom was immediate. Audible gasps, nervous groans, and shocked expressions frozen on the faces of global superstars. But Gervais didn't pause. Moments later, he brought up journalist Ronan Farrow, warning the room full of executives that Farrow was actively working on his next expose and that everyone sitting in that room was terrified of what he might uncover. Gervais was explicitly linking the people sitting in front of him to the very abuses and cover-ups that were breaking in the news. The climax of the monologue arrived when Gervais introduced the Netflix film Bird Box, a movie where characters survive by wearing blindfolds to avoid looking at an inescapable horror. Gervais quipped that watching the film was equivalent to working for Harvey Weinstein for 20 years, pointing out that everyone in that room knew what Weinstein was doing and actively chose to look the other way. The punchline landed with devastating force because it was delivered just hours before Weinstein's criminal trial officially commenced in New York. Gervais closed his historic monologue by stripping away the moral authority of the entire room. As actors prepared to accept awards and deliver speeches on global social issues, Gervais told them flatly that they were in no position to lecture the public about anything. He pointed out that they spent less time in school than Greta Thunberg and worked for corporations that operated sweatshops in Asia. His final instruction to the winners was simple. If you win, come up, accept your little award, thank your agent and your God, and get the off. Unlike typical award show hosts who issue calculated public apologies within 48 hours of a controversial joke, Gervais doubled down. The morning after the broadcast, he took to social media to reinforce his statements, refusing to clarify, soften, or apologize for a single word. In subsequent interviews, he challenged the growing culture of industry censorship and corporate hypocrisy, explaining that he refused to pander to ultra-wealthy elites who spent their lives protected from the consequences of their own actions. The true significance of Gervais's 2020 monologue became fully clear in the years that followed. As federal court documents, flight logs, and unsealed witness testimonies related to the Epstein and Weinstein cases were progressively made public between 2024 and 2026, clips of Gervais's opening remarks went viral once again across global video platforms. Millions of viewers rewatched the 2020 footage with a fresh perspective, realizing that Gervais wasn't delivering hyperbolic comedy. He was delivering an accurate summary of an ongoing criminal investigation live on primetime television. Gervais had achieved what few commentators ever accomplish. He took the whispers circulating behind the closed doors of executive suites and shouted them into a live television microphone to 200 million people worldwide. While investigative journalists spent years fighting legal injunctions and media blockades to publish the truth, Gervais used the cover of a comedy roast to lay out the evidence in plain sight. He showed the world that the most effective way to expose a room full of powerful people is not always to debate them. Sometimes, it is simply to state what they are doing and watch them squirm in their seats. The convergence of these two distinct timelines, Mel Gibson's early exile and Ricky Gervais's unrelenting comedy, eventually exposed a fundamental flaw in how the entertainment industry manages public perception. For nearly 3 decades, Hollywood relied on a reliable PR model: silence the whistleblowers, label the outspoken as unstable, and convert genuine institutional criticism into harmless entertainment. But as legal documents, unsealed court filings, and federal investigations began catching up with reality, the carefully curated boundary between conspiracy theory and verified truth completely dissolved. This shift became undeniable when public attention turned toward the long-ignored details surrounding the cases of high-profile predators and elite networks. For years, figureheads like Courtney Love had been blacklisted simply for warning young actors on red carpets about Harvey Weinstein's hotel parties. Outspoken artists who questioned the behavior of studio executives were systematically marginalized, stripped of distribution deals, or labeled too toxic to hire. The industry maintained a double standard where personal outbursts or independent thinking resulted in immediate career termination, while systemic abuse and criminal cover-ups were shielded behind non-disclosure agreements, legal intimidation, and corporate solidarity. When federal courts began unsealing hundreds of pages of court documents between late 2024 and 2026, the public response was not shock at the contents, but rather a profound sense of recognition. Millions of people watched as names, flight logs, and witness statements aligned with the exact subtext that Gervais had laid out on the Golden Globe stage, and that Gibson had alluded to decades earlier. The internet did not wait for traditional news outlets to frame the narrative. Users immediately re-uploaded clips from 1998, 2016, and 2020, positioning Gibson and Gervais not as controversial figures, but as reluctant witnesses who had tried to warn the public all along. The contrast between how the industry punishes outspoken critics versus how it protects profitable assets remains one of the most damning aspects of modern entertainment history. Historically, directors and executives convicted of severe crimes against minors were routinely met with standing ovations at prestige award ceremonies, granted quiet return routes into the studio system, and insulated by industry peers. Meanwhile, Actors who exposed corporate corruption or refused to participate in the traditional studio pipeline were exiled to the margins. The system did not cast people out for committing harm. It cast them out for creating public messes that could not be easily cleaned up or controlled. Mel Gibson's gradual return to public and political visibility highlighted this exact dynamic. After spending over a decade in professional exile, surviving primarily on independent projects and overseas funding, his directorial work on films like Hacksaw Ridge proved that his artistic capability remained intact despite years of industry blacklisting. By the mid-2020s, as political and cultural shifts reshaped Washington and Los Angeles, Gibson found himself repositioned from an industry outcast to an official figure with institutional oversight, a stark reversal for a man whom Hollywood studio heads had vowed never to work with again. His involvement in independent distribution channels and high-grossing faith-based projects further demonstrated that mainstream studio backing was no longer required to achieve global commercial success. Similarly, Ricky Gervais demonstrated the ultimate power of creative independence in the digital age. By refusing to accept standard studio contracts and maintaining full ownership over his intellectual property, Gervais removed the primary lever of control that Hollywood executives used to enforce compliance. When the 2025 award show season arrived, Gervais bypassed traditional network broadcasts entirely. Rather than waiting for an invitation to host, he released his own unfiltered monologues directly to millions of followers online, recorded casually from his home. He addressed current legal scandals, federal indictments, and industry hypocrisy with the exact same ruthless precision, proving that an independent artist with a direct connection to the audience no longer needs permission from corporate gatekeepers to speak. The parallel journeys of Mel Gibson and Ricky Gervais ultimately reveal a crucial reality about modern media power. One man attempted to fight the system from the inside, spoke out too early without the backing of digital infrastructure, and paid for it with 15 years of intense isolation and public destruction. The other man used the shield of satire, operated with full financial independence, and used the industry's own broadcast network to deliver an unedited indictment directly to 200 million people worldwide. Both men took entirely different paths, operated from completely different ideological perspectives, and faced vastly different consequences, yet both arrived at the exact same conclusion regarding the nature of power in Hollywood. As the entertainment landscape continues to fracture under the weight of streaming platforms, independent production houses, and direct-to-consumer distribution, the traditional studio apparatus has lost its ability to dictate reality. The era when a small group of executives could quietly bury a story, isolate a critic, or protect a predator behind closed doors has come to an end. The public no longer views award show glamour as a symbol of cultural authority, but rather as a performance designed to distract from the reality behind the curtain. Ultimately, the story of these two men is not merely about Hollywood gossip, viral award show moments, or celebrity feuds. It is a case study in how truth survives within systems designed to suppress it. It proves that while powerful institutions can delay accountability through legal pressure, public relations campaigns, and forced blacklisting, they cannot control the narrative forever. When the dust finally settles and the official records are opened, history does not remember the polished speeches delivered by compliant stars. It remembers the voices that were bold enough to speak the truth when nobody else in the room was willing to say a word.